We got John McMullen Jody McDonald here with you on Birds 365. Your Mac on Mac, guys. Looking forward to talking to Eric at home in less than 15 minutes from now. All right, I ran this by D-Gun. I'm going to ask you to do the same, John. Defensive ends. It's absolutely a position. Edge players. I know you and I both like the word edge better because given the chance, people will describe Hassan
Drives me
Reddick.
nuts. That's one you were talking about. We all got our pet peeves. You got luxury picks. I got calling Hassan Reddick a linebacker drives me insane.
Right. So we'll use the phrase edge instead. I think that is a distinct possibility that's where the Eagles' first pick in the upcoming first round will land. Will that be at 10? That's where it's lodged to go right now. Will they potentially move up? Will they try and move back? I'd say more so back than up, but that's just me. But let's just leave it at the Eagles' first pick in the first round, wherever that may land. There's a good chance that they'll use it on a defensive edge player. How would you rank the top 5 guys going into this draft that you can get the number 1 guy, which would probably mean trading up, or you get the second or third or fourth, or you'd have to settle for the 5th because you probably traded back? How would you rank for the Philadelphia Eagles? Not necessarily the way that they would rank on a wide open board and any team could take them, but fitting in with the Philadelphia Eagles, how would you rank the 5 top edge guys?
Yeah, that's how I always do it. So, Eagles wise, I think, Will Anderson would be first, and I think they're pretty consistent that they're not going to be able to get in a position to get him. And then I would put Tyree Wilson second, and I think there's an outside chance he might be the targeted trade up that we often talk about that they did last year. If he starts to drop a little bit and they say, maybe we can go up and get him. I think that could be a potential, but very unlikely. Nolan Smith, I think, would be number 3 for them. I think they really like him. I'm starting to lean towards him at number 10 overall if they just stay put. Lukas Van Ness is a player they really like as well. I think he could be the targeted trade down, so to speak, if you're going down from 10 to 12 or 13. I think he could be back in that spot. And then the 5th guy, I think they're focused on those 4. Well, Will to me doesn't even count, but then you start talking about, maybe Murphy, because he's got, significant talent, and he's sort of kind of the same frame as Van Ness. So if you're looking for that type of player, for whatever reason, he's kind of fallen down a little bit from where he started in the process. But I kind of put him sort of down the list. I think the wheelhouse would be, Wilson, unlikely, but maybe targeted trade up. Nolan Smith, most likely. Lukas Van Ness, targeted trade down.
Now, is this your evaluation of the Eagles' evaluation or John McMullen's evaluation?
No, that's my Eagles. My evaluation is always what I think the Eagles are going to do, because I'll say, who would I have? I would have Van Ness ahead of Smith, and that's would be my only adjustment. I'd have Will first, I'd have Tyree second, I'd have Van Ness third, I have Nolan Smith. I'm a little concerned. Nolan Smith is really undersized.
Yep.
I'm a little concerned with that. And Van Ness is he to me is an NFL prospect from the perspective of the upside, man. They're always looking for upside guys. If he hits, he doesn't have a lot of tread off the tire. He's got this, because of the way Iowa does things. He's just in a position Trey Hendrickson has been the comp that a lot of people have used, who is just, double digit. That I think is his upside. So he would be a little bit higher for me just because of the size and the frame.
See, mine would be, I would move Murphy up to number 3. We agree that Anderson is number 1. And by the way, I was doing that only quasi tongue in cheek. I think there's a chance that Anderson can drop down to 5 or 6 or 7. Really hope 7 from an Eagle perspective, because that would cost you less to move up. If he does go number 3 because the quarterbacks only go 1, 2 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, all right, the Eagles aren't getting up to 3. I know that the Arizona Cardinals will make that pick available, and teams may want to move up, and not. Chances are they're going to want to move up for one of the quarterbacks, which means the Eagles would have to pay a premium to get there. So I don't think they're going to do that. So he's got to get to probably 5 for them to even be in the conversation. Oh, I think it's a conversation worth having, because just personally, I have him ranked as the number 1 player in the draft. And we talk so much about value and how you get value and how you bend over backwards to achieve value, and Howie Roseman is married to it. You're getting the best player in the draft at number 5. Most times, Eagles can't even be in the conversation because they can't possibly move up from where they are in the 20s or the 30s to get to number 5. But because of the great trade that Howie Roseman made last year, which gave him New Orleans pick at number 10, there is actually a path to this. I would look after that path, because I think there is a big drop-off. There's Anderson, then there's a drop-off, then there's Wilson, then there's a lesser drop-off for me, and number 3 is Myles Murphy. And you're right. You check out some of the guys' drafts, the mocks, the guys who know, and we're going to have Eric at home, and I'm very interested to see how he ranks the edge rushers in this draft. Murphy is more 4, 5, 6 than he is 3, 4, 5. So I like the kid better than Van Ness. I like him better, and I do like Smith. But you and I are quasi on the same page here. I don't see a lineup that's got both Reddick and Smith in it with 2 smaller linebackers. You really are. You're daring another team to run the ball down your throat.
Yeah.
When you're going
to I would say I don't see it consistently. Maybe you can do it as a curveball every now and again on 3rd and 13 when it's an obvious passing situation. But then we get in that discussion we had last year with Jordan Davis, and we still have, is situational, player what you want at number 10 overall, especially as an edge rusher. I don't know. It's a very valuable position. And that's one of the reasons I lean towards Van Ness as well. Plus, there's, he's 21, and he looks like, age is a big thing with the Eagles, and especially in this COVID world, where you have 25, sometimes 26-year-old prospects. He's 21, and he looks like, he's 35 from a frame standpoint. And one of the things you always hear with offensive, defensive linemen coming in, they got to get stronger. They got to get stronger. They got to get stronger. They call it old man strength in the NFL. Those vet guys who've been in the weight room for years with NFL level strength and conditioning staffs, they're just massively powerful. He's got the frame to be that guy 5 years from now, to just be I always think of Justin Smith. You remember Justin Smith in a world, now he was a defensive tackle, so not but he was just so strong in the world of strong people. It stood out. I think Van Ness has a chance to be that guy 3-4 years. He's got such a huge upside. That's why I put him where I put him.
All right. Now we'll see if this rings true for everybody, because everyone has, in historical 2020 hindsight, their opinion. I think Van Ness could be Mike Mamula too.
Oh.
And again, all depending on how you look at what Mike Mamula achieved. he wasn't a bust. People, oh, Mamula was such a bust. In comparison to where he was drafted, he was an underachiever. I don't think he was ever a bust. And I think people unfairly review Mike Mamula's career. Oh, he's just a bust. He wasn't a bust. He just wasn't as good as he was supposed to be where he was drafted. Yeah, that's what I think about Van Ness. I think.
Well, I disagree from that perspective. I was just talking about, like, he's strong enough to play in the NFL right now. Right now, Lukas Van Ness is strong enough, and that's rare with a rookie. My concern is he turns into the old school, what we were just talking about with D Gun, the old school edge guy who needed to be long and needed to hold the edge and run support. And that was more important than just going after the quarterback, which isn't as important now. My concern is he turns into an old school defensive end, old school left defensive end, base defensive end, they used to call it, where you had to hold, it was your job to hold the edge, and you were okay as a pass rusher if you had a live body and blah, blah, blah. That's my concern with Lukas Van Ness. That to me is his floor, and people are looking for pass rushers. He's already so much stronger than Mike Mamula coming in. I mean, and that's why I'm so high. He's already got an NFL functional football strength level.
Then let me ask you this question, John. If the way you're describing him, why didn't he start at Iowa?
Well, that's how they do things. But that's another thing. But
wouldn't you hold the guy who you think is the better pass rusher for the later downs?
Well, you could
first
say
down is you don't really know whether they're running the ball.
That's my concern.
Demarcation. You got to be good enough to play on 1st and 10.
Well, that's my concern. They do things the way they do things, and we talked about the same thing in Georgia, but Georgia's Georgia. When you have waves and waves of 5-star prospects, it is a projection as a pass rusher. That's my concern. But the projection, because of his size, because of his speed at that size, because of his short area quickness, is off the charts. But yeah, it's a projection. There's no doubt about that. I just think his ceiling is high. And that's the trick to the NFL. That's the trick to the NFL draft. You try to find these guys who are, again, it's not about college. It's about what are you going to be in the pros? And there's a lot of good college players who aren't good pros. Even at high profile schools like Alabama, Georgia, LSU, SEC schools, a lot of good players from those schools that don't turn out to be great pros. And there's a lot of guys who, were used poorly. I don't even know if he was used poorly. I don't know much about Iowa's defensive line outside of him. I don't know how much talent they had on it, but you would think of the guys in the potential to be a top 15 pick.
He'd be playing all 3 downs
at Iowa. You'd think he'd play all the time, but that's another positive in some ways from the NFL because, as I mentioned, the tread's on the tire. The tire, it's complete. You got some of these guys, and again, I talked about older prospects, especially in the COVID, 24, 25, and they played a ton of football. Reed Blankenship is an example of this. 5-year starter at Middleton, 5 years, and just played every snap and every. So his probably his length, if he turns into a starting player, which the Eagles hope, and totally different level, obviously, as an undrafted guy. But I mean, this guy's 21. There's no tread off the tire, so that helps the projection as well, the upside.
If you're talking about a top 10 pick, I'm talking about talent, not how many snaps he.
Well, he's got plenty of talent as well. That's the point. He's got tons of talent. He's 275, 6'5". He runs under a sub 4.6. Yeah, we'll talk to Eric about that. He'll tell you.
We will do just that. Eric Edholm from the NFL.com covers the entire league, but is a draft specialist as well. And I like the fact that he doesn't just spit out a mock every 20 minutes. He sends them out as needed. So we're going to ask him to mock it up with us next. Eric Edholm, NFL.com, joins Birds 365.